Hello friends. Welcome to Fictional Vortex. How are you all? So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Naruto becomes the Fox Dragon Warrior. Also be sure to subscribe and like this video. Now let's begin. Opening his deep blue eyes, Naruto looked around his bedroom. It was just a basic room with a bed, cupboard, drawers, and a window with a perfect view of the Jade Palace, which is high up the mountains. He stood up from his bed, stretched, and looked at the full-body mirror that was attached to the cupboard. All he was wearing was black pants as his tails swished lazily behind him, all 9 of them. He was a fox with 9 tails and had dark orange, nearly red, fur with blonde hair on top. His tails and ears were tipped with white. He sighed and thought, another nightmare. It was just like the rest of his dreams, reminders of the past that he wishes to forget but he could never let them go. He was cut from his thoughts when there was a knock at his door. Yeah. He called, Naruto, it's time to get up, said a teenage female voice. I'm coming, Ayame, he said back as he put clothes on. He was wearing his black pants with an open red vest over his torso. He sighed as he opened his door and went downstairs. When he got there he said good morning. Ayame, who was a brown cat with brown eyes and was wearing an apron, said morning. A man, Chuki, appeared near them. He looked like an old cat with his eyes closed as he also wore an apron. Both he and Ayame have been with Naruto ever since he was 5, so he was practically family to them. They also own a ramen restaurant called Ichiraku's Morning. Naruto, can you help with the customers? Sure, he said, putting an apron on. He walked by a table and picked up a couple bowls of ramen. His 9 tails also picked up one each as well. As he walked he couldn't help but gaze at the Jade Palace with a feeling like something was going to happen. Jade Palace. Master Shifu, a red panda, sat peacefully in a garden as he played a flute. As he played he could sense 5 individuals around him. Suddenly from behind a snake shot out and then a tiger, and a monkey from his front, a crane from his left, and a mantis from his right, all appeared running and flying at him. Opening his eyes, Shifu stood up and deflected the snake's attack, ducked underneath the tiger's kick, flipped into the air and hit the crane on the head with his flute and flipped over the monkey and mantis. He continued to dodge or deflect all their attacks until he signaled them all to stop. Well done, students, he said with a smile as they all stood. If you were trying to disappoint me. He pointed the flute. The tiger, tigress, you need more ferocity. He pointed to the monkey, monkey, greater speed. Then the crane, crane, height. Then the snake, viper, subtlety. Finally he motioned to mantis, mantis. He was cut off by a bird. Master Shifu. What? He shouted back, pointing the flute. It's Master Ogwe. He wants to see you, he said in fear, causing the red panda's eyes to widen. It didn't take long for Shifu to run to the Hall of Heroes. A hall that contained multiple legendary weapons and the scroll of the Dragon Warrior. At the end, in front of the moon pool, you could see a shell balanced on a stick. Once Shifu was close enough, he stopped and breathed calmly. Once done he bowed respectively and asked, Master Ogwe, you summoned me. Is something wrong? The shell moved around and you can see an aged, upside-down, turtle. He took hold of the staff and climbed down with ease, saying, why must something be wrong for me to want to see my old friend? So, nothing's wrong, asked back a confused Shifu. Well, I didn't say that, he said. Then he blew a candle, and then another candle, and then another candle. Shifu's right eye was twitching uncontrollably as his jaw practically unhinged itself in disbelief. Taking the initiative, Shifu brought his arms back and then thrusted them forward, which blew out the rest of the candles. You were saying? I had a vision, said Ogwe. He then stared into Shifu's eyes. Tai Lung will return. Shifu's eyes widened in shock as memories flew through his mind. He remembered all the destruction that he caused. That is impossible. He is in prison. Ogwe smiled. Nothing is impossible, he said wisely. Zung, shouted Shifu, calling the bird that informed him, fly to Churgom prison and tell them to double the guards, double the weapons, double everything. Tai Lung does not leave that prison. Yes, Master Shifu, shouted Zung as he flew away as fast as he could. Unfortunately the bird didn't see where he was going as he flew into a pillar and then left the temple. One often meets his destiny, one the road he takes to avoid it, commented Ogwe. We have to do something, said Shifu frantically. We can't let him march into the valley, take his revenge. Heal, Your mind is like this water, my friend. When it is agitated, it becomes difficult to see, he said, using his staff to touch the water and causing pp less to occur, but if you allow it to settle. The answer becomes clear as the water settled and all the sakura petals moved. Shifu saw a reflection in the water. It was the dragon statue on the roof and it held the dragon scroll. The dragon scroll, gasped out Shifu. It is time. But who is worthy to be trusted with the secret to limitless power? To become the dragon warrior. Was a moment of silence before Ogwe said something that nearly caused Shifu to face fault. I don't know. Ichiraku's. Naruto made his way across the restaurant giving people their orders. Adi smiled at him and the children laughed. However, Naruto stopped what he was doing when he saw a few ducks hand a poster up. Going up to it, he read it and gasped, Master Ogwe is going to choose the dragon warrior today. Everybody got up and started walking towards the Jade Palace. Naruto was about to head there until he felt something being put onto his back. Looking, he saw it was a portable kitchen used for ramen. He saw both Chuki and Ayame were also wearing them as well. What? Asked Chuki. We have to sell ramen, so let's go. They all went up and Naruto couldn't help but groan at the amount of steps. When they reached the top, it was practically a parade with a lot of festivities. It is a historic day, said Shifu as he walked with Ogwe, watching as the trials were set up. Isn't it, Master Ogwe? Yes, and one I feared I would not live to see, he said with a smile. Are your students ready? Yes, Master Ogwe. Ogwe then looked at Shifu. Know this, old friend. Whomever I choose will not only bring peace to the valley, but also to you, he said, making Shifu squint his eyes in confusion. A pig then stepped forward. Once everybody was ready, let the tournament begin. Everybody clapped and cheered. Naruto, Chuki, and Ayame all started serving out ramen to animals that wanted it. Citizens of the Valley of Peace, it is my great honor to present to you Tigress, Viper, Crane, Monkey, Mantis, the Furious Five, shouted Shifu. Naruto watched in amazement as the Furious Five jumped into the air and landed perfectly. Crane even managed to create a wave of wind that lifted the small children an inch off the ground. Warriors prepare. Crane stayed on the field as the rest stood off to the side. A giant mechanism was pushed forward. Road and Naruto overheard a villager call at the 1,000 tongues of fire. For the next hour Naruto watched as 4 of the Furious Five performed kung fu that amazed the audience. Him, Chuki, and Ayame have managed to serve a lot of ramen. But Naruto knew he still had a little left. So he walked up to Ogwe and Shifu and asked, Masters, would either of you like some ramen? I would love some, said Ogwe with a smile. Shifu just shrugged and accepted a bowl. Why don't you go serve the 5 warriors? I'm sure they are hungry. Naruto nodded with a smile. He walked up to each of them and they each had a bowl. But Tigress refused. He shrugged and went to the side to take the ramen stuff off of his back. Finally, shouted Shifu, Master Tigress. The crowd cheered at this. Yuto was about to start clapping until a sound caught his ear. Looking around, he decided to go see what it was. Master Tigress face the iron ox and his blades of death. Naruto heard. After a minute of searching, Naruto saw it was a flame about to ignite a large firework. Eyes widening, he tried to stomp it out without realizing that one of his tails has getting caught in a rope attached to the firework. Ogwe sensed something and raised his hand. Seeing this, everybody went silent. I sense the dragon warrior is among us. Shifu nodded and the Furious Five stood in a line. Citizens of the Valley of Peace, Master Ogwe will now choose the dragon warrior. Ogwe and Shifu slowly stepped down and approached the warriors. Back with Naruto, the flame would not be stomped out. By the time he realized, it was too late as it ignited and flew into the air, with Naruto along with it. Thankfully Naruto got his tail off of the rocket before it exploded. Unfortunately he didn't realize how high up he was until he looked down. He screamed and fell and was knocked unconscious when he hit the ground. When he opened his eyes, everything was fuzzy. As it became clearer, the first thing he saw was Mantis and the other Furious Five looking at him with worry. Well, Tigress just looked annoyed and angered. What happened? He asked groggily. Looking around, he saw Ogwe pointing at him with an amazed smile. Realizing what happened, he quickly stood saying sorry. Sorry. How interesting, commented Ogwe. Master, are you pointing at me? Asked Tigress with hope. Him, he said, pointing at Naruto. Who? Asked back Naruto. Moving around he saw Obwe continue to point at him. You, he said with a smile. Me? Asked a shocked Naruto. The universe has brought us the Dragon Warrior. Shouted Obwe as he used his staff to raise Naruto's arm. What? What? Shouted the furious five. What? Shouted Shifu. What? Shouted Chuki and Ayame. A gong went off and a parade started. Ducks appeared with a carriage and hoisted Naruto up onto its top. Wait, who told you to? Shifu was ignored as the ducks continued to carry him. Master Obwe. Wait, shouted Shifu, that fox can't possibly be the answer to our problem. You were about to point at Tigress until that thing fell in front of her. That was just an accident. Obwe Neve. R lost his smile as Shifu spoke. There are no accidents. As the ducks carried Naruto away, the furious five walked up to Shifu and bowed with shame. Forgive us, master, we have failed you. No, said Shifu, raising his arm. If the fox has not quit by morning, then I will have failed you. Churgam prison. Zung flew tiredly as he approached the prison. He was so tired that he landed in front of a couple of rhino guards. Wait, I bring a message, he shouted when they drew their weapons from Master Shifu. What? Shouted a deep voice. Once Zung told Commander Vakir what Shifu wanted. The rhino was angry. Double the guard. Extra precautions. Your prison may not be adequate. Zung chuckled nervously. You doubt my prison security? Absolutely not, said Zung as serious as he could. Shifu does. I'm just the messenger. I'll give you a message for your master Shifu, he said before walking with the duck. Following escape from Churgam prison is impossible. Zung looked down and saw they were at the topmost level of the prison. Impressive, isn't it? It's very impressive, muttered Zung as he shook in fear. One way in, one way out. 1,000 guards, and only one prisoner. Yes, except that prisoner is Tai Lung. They both went onto a mechanism. Take us down, ordered Vakir. The mechanism took them. For amusement, Vakir shook the chains, making Zung even more scared. When they got to the bottom, a gate opened. Behold, Tai Lung. I'm just gonna wait right here. It's nothing to worry about. It's perfectly safe, said Vakir as he slapped Zung forward. Crossbows, at the ready. All crossbows were then aimed straight for Tai Ling. Crossbows, whispered Zung. Hey tough guy, did you hear? Asked Vakir, approaching Tai Lung's prone form. His hands had chains that connected to large boulders over the side, and on his back was a lock that stopped Tai Lung's movement. Obwe's giving someone the dragon scroll, and it's not gonna be you. What are you doing? Whispered Zung loudly. Don't get him mad. What's he gonna do about it? I have him completely immobilized to prove he was right. Vakir stomped on Tai Lung's tail as hard as he could. Tai Lung didn't even move. Vakir then went close to him and said, like a small child, did I step on the little kitty's tail? Not taking his chances, Zung said, I'm good, I've seen enough. I'll tell Shifu he has nothing to worry about. No he doesn't, said Vakir, happy that he proven himself right. I'll tell him that. Can we please go now? One of Zung's feathers fell in front of Tai Lung, causing him to open his eyes in the dark. Jade Palace. Naruto was overwhelmed by the amount of cheering for him. The second they entered the Jade Palace, the ducks threw Naruto out of the carriage. Ao, said Naruto, I think there was a mistake. Everyone thinks that I am the Dragon Warrior. He sighed before turning around and noticed where he was, the Hall of Heroes. He looked around. This place looks cool, he muttered. He approached a sword that had a green Chinese dragon on it. On the bottom of the stand was a plaque that said the Sword of Heroes, said to be so sharp that you can cut yourself just by looking up. Naruto stared at it before trying to hold it. He only got a few inches away before retracting his hand and wincing. Ow. Naruto continued to look around before noticing he wasn't alone. Looking towards the moon pool he saw Shifu. Master Shifu, he said, bowing. So you're the legendary Dragon Warrior? He asked rhetorically. Yeah, about that. There was a mistake, and of course there was a mistake, shouted Shifu, walking around Naruto. You are not the Dragon Warrior. You will never be the Dragon Warrior until you have learned the secret of the Dragon Scroll, he said, pointing to the top of the room and at the dragon statue. One must first master the highest level of Kung Fu, and that is clearly impossible if that one is someone like you. Like me, repeated Naruto, not liking what he heard. Yes, look at you. I have never seen a fox with 9 tails before. He took a step back. Obwe may have picked you, but when I'm through with you, I promise you, You were going to wish he hadn't. Are we clear? Yes, said Naruto with a growl. Good. I can't wait to get started, said Shifu with an evil grin. He then led Naruto to the Furious Five's training room, where they were now training. He watched as Crane flew the ceiling and landed on an unsteady bowl, whilst blocking arrows from different directions. Tigress T. Hen flipped over to him and they started sparring. Mantis landed next to the bowl and shot through a lot of spiked training dummies. Viper was dodging fire as she slithered around. Finally Monk Y was swinging around on the ceiling and jumped through a hoop that had blades all around it. Tigress then went onto a spinning mechanism that looked like serpents. She was also dodging several swinging clubs that had spikes on them. Suddenly she smashed one and the wood went flying straight at Naruto. Trusting his instincts, Naruto ducked underneath a large piece of wood and caught a smaller but that would have hit his face. Shifu was speechless when he saw this. Well, let's begin, he said, wanting to see Naruto lose and leave the temple. Already? Asked Naruto. Yes, now. Unless you think the great Obwe was wrong and you are not the dragon warrior, said Shifu, practically saying, get the hell out of the temple. For the last time, I am not the dragon. Naruto was cut off when Monkey accidentally landed behind him and pushed him. Naruto went forward and onto the spinning serpent mechanisms. Even though he had never done anything like this before, Naruto showed he had great balance as his tails kept him upright. The Furious Five landed next to Shifu and was about to help Naruto until their master stopped them, saying this should be good as Naruto went about. His instincts went off again and his tail shot up, clicking one of the clubs. However, the force of the impact still blew Naruto away and into the large jade green bowl. He managed to get out of it, but, when he did, went straight into the spiked dummies. He used his tails and arms to block, but some did hit him. This will be easier than I thought. After getting out of it, Naruto thought he was safe. That was until he heard a strange sound and looked down. It was then that he realized that he was standing on the field of fire. With great luck he managed to avoid most of the blasts, with only a few actually hitting him. He finished and collapsed whilst breathing heavily. How did I do? He asked, panting. You could tell Shifu was mad seeing that Naruto hadn't given up. Later that night, there are no words, said Mantis as he and the others walked up the steps to their bedrooms. There is no denying that, commented Crane. What was Master Obwe thinking? Asked Viper. The poor guy is going to get himself killed. He is so mighty, said Crane with sarcasm. The dragon warrior fell out of the sky on a ball of fire. The others, but Tigress, laughed. One would think Master Obwe would choose someone who actually knew Kung Fu, said Tigress. They all laughed and continued walking without knowing Naruto was sitting behind a tree. He was sad. Even though he knew he wasn't the dragon warrior, he at least tried his best. As they made fun of him, memories of his past entered his mind. He nearly screamed, so he did the only thing he could think of. Run. He ran through the forest without knowing where he was going. After a while he stopped and saw he was on a hill with a peach tree, far from the temple. It was here that he screamed. He screamed to the heavens, but he got no answer. Until I see you have found the sacred peach tree of heavenly wisdom, said a voice from behind. Turning, Naruto saw it was Obwe Master. He greeted before looking at the tree. I thought I found a random peach tree. I understand. You go to isolated places when you are upset. Who said I was upset? Asked back Naruto as he turned away. Your eyes, said the turtle. I can see how you feel just by looking into your eyes. I saw that you were upset and I also saw that you have a troubled past. Naruto's eyes widened at this. So why are you upset? Sighing, Naruto sat down against the tree. Even thought I tried my best. I made a fool of myself in front of Master Shifu and the five. Probably, commented Obwe. And just recently I overheard the five talking behind my back. They hate me. Obviously. I used to have respect for everyone here. But Master Shifu and the others have lost my respect. I know I'm not good at Kung Fu, but they could at least help me instead of criticizing me. Naruto sighed again. I should probably just leave. I don't belong here. I have more chance of making noodles for Ichiraku's than learning Kung Fu here. Obwe smiled sadly. Don't quit. Noodles. Don't noodles. Naruto looked at him. You are too concerned with what was and what will be. There's a saying. Yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery. And today is a gift. That is why it is called the present, he said wisely, and is a crazy old turtle at the same time. He began to walk away as hit the tree as he walked by it. A peach fell out of the tree and landed in Naruto's hand, making the fox smile. Eventually he returned to the temple. He slowly walked, not caring if he made any noise. Just as he got to his room's door, the door behind him opened to show Tigress. "You don't belong here," she said. Her eyes seemed to bore into his through the dark. "You do not belong in the Jade Palace. You are a disgrace to Kung Fu. And if you have any respect for who we are and what we do, you will be gone by morning," she said. More memories flashed throughout his mind, causing Naruto to hold his head in pain. Seeing this, Tigress was about to ask if he was all right, but he took a step into his room. Just as he was about to shut the door, he looked her in the eyes and said, "I may not belong here and that all of you find me a disgrace. But I still try. I know I am not the Dragon Warrior, and I know Master Ogwe was going to choose you until I landed in front of you. But that does not give any of you the right to tell me to stop and walk away." As he spoke, Tigress's eyes widened when she saw the determination in his eyes. "I will stay. Not to prove anyone right, that I'm a disgrace or that I am the Dragon Warrior. I will stay to prove that I am Naruto Uzumaki and that I will never give up." With that he shut his door, leaving a stunned Tigress. He opened the door again. "Also, if you or the others have anything to say, then say it to my face rather than behind my back. Good night, Tigress." Then he shut the door. Gom prison. Tai Lung used his tail and grabbed the feather that landed in front of him. Using it, he put it in the lock on his back. His tail moved the feather in a complex way. Eventually the lock made a noise and it unlocked itself, allowing Tai Lung to take a deep breath. He stretched his claws and let them crack with a satisfying sound. Parts of the lock shot off in different directions. Then it exploded off of him. Vakir ran to the edge and looked down in Tai Lung's direction. Seeing him trying to escape, "Oh no!" he shouted. "What's happening?" shouted Zung as he ran beside Vakir. Tai Lung growled as he tried to stand. It was difficult with 2 boulders tied to his arms, but he managed it. Once stood, he looked straight at Vakir and roared. Seeing this, Vakir shouted, "Fire crossbows!" "Fire!" shouted a soldier. They each shot a large arrow. But, whilst standing still, Tai Lung moved out of the way, making the arrows slam into the ground. A round arrow was shot, but this time, Tai Lung moved so it would hit his right cuff, effectively destroying it. With his now free hand, he smashed the other cuff. Tai Lung is free. "I must warn Shifu," shouted Zung, but Vakir grabbed him before he could leave. "You're not going anywhere and neither is he," shouted Vakir. "Bring it up," he shouted, referring to the mechanism. "Wait," shouted a soldier. "Bring it back," he shouted as it was brought up. Tai Lung growled but turned, seeing another arrow being shot at him. It neared, but he deflected it and fired it back into a wall. He did the same for the 4 arrows that were in the ground. He cracked his neck before jumping onto the last arrow, and catapulted himself towards the next arrow. "He's coming this way," shouted Zung, still being held. "He won't get far." "Archers!" Vakir shouted. Hundreds of regular arrows were shot towards Tai Lung. Seeing them coming, he quickly jumped towards the still-moving mechanism. He managed to catch the bottom and used it to stop the arrows hitting him. He rhinos at the top quickly sliced the chain, sending the mechanism back down. Just as they were about to celebrate, Tai Lung appeared and knocked them away with a split kick. He grabbed the chain and jumped over the side. The momentum swung him and launched him up to the next level. Without any difficulty, he beat all the rhino soldiers and went to the next level. Doing the same, he nagged to get to the top where the rest of the soldiers, Vakir and Zung, were waiting for him. "We're dead. So very, very dead," said Zung. Vakir laughed. "Not yet, we're not." He looked to a certain archer now. He fired a flaming arrow towards the ceiling. Tai Lung watched and widened his eyes when he saw it hitting explosives. Large pieces of rock fell and slammed into the stone bridge. Without hesitation, Tai Lung started running. He was not, however, fast enough and started falling with the stone bridge. Thinking he won, Vakir started laughing. Tai Lung looked up and saw one last piece of explosives about to go off. So he started jumping and running up other pieces. He then jumped and landed on a piece of rock. He climbed to the explosives and cut it off. "Can we run now?" asked Zung. "Yes," said Vakir, sounding like he was about to cry. Tai Lung spun around and threw the explosives. It exploded, forcing everybody outside into the cold snow. Stepping out, he first grabbed Zung and took a chilling breath. I'm glad Shifu sent you, he said, petting the bird. I was beginning to think I'd been forgotten. Fly back there and tell them that the real dragon warrior is coming home. Zung nodded out of fear before he was thrown into the air and flew away. Jade Palace. A gong went off, early in the morning. The second it went off, the Furious Five all exited their rooms and said, "Good morning, Master," to Shifu. However, they all noticed that Naruto hadn't come out of his room yet. Fox called out Shifu. He walked to his room and slammed the doors open. "Wake up." But was surprised to find nobody there. Shifu chuckled. "He's gone," he said. The others didn't really seem to care, but Tigress looked down, remembering his words from last night. "If you or the others have anything to say, then say it to my face rather than behind my back," she then thought. He knew what we were saying and he left. I thought he was staying to prove who he was. They all walked to the training yard. "What do we do now, with the fox gone?" asked Viper with worry. "Who will be the dragon warrior?" Shifu never lost his smile. "All we can do is resume our training and trust that in time the true dragon warrior will be revealed." He opened the gates only to see Naruto panting as he leant against a tree. "What are you doing here?" shouted Shifu. The others widened their eyes seeing the fox. Naruto didn't seem surprised when he heard Shifu shouting, "Good morning, Master," he greeted. "I was just training." "In what?" asked Tigress before Shifu could say anything. Naruto smiled before saying, "A full split." "You actually thought you could learn to do a full split in one night?" questioned Shifu. "It takes years to develop one's flexibility," he said, throwing two discs high into the air. Tigress stepped forward and crouched, without losing her smirk, and years longer to apply it in combat. He snapped his fingers and Tigress jumped following the discs. Once she was level, she did a split without difficulty and destroyed the discs. When she landed, she gave Naruto a challenging smirk. Pieces of the discs fell to the ground. As Naruto looked at Tigress, with her watching, he caught a piece of disc without looking away from her. Both their smirks seemed to grow a bit with amusement. "Put that down," shouted Shifu. "The only souvenirs we collect here are bloody knuckles and broken bones." If anything, Naruto's smirk only grew and it angered Shifu. "Let's get started." He snapped his fingers and they all entered a ring, with only her and Naruto in the middle. "Are you ready?" she asked. "Let's go," Naruto said, getting into a stance. However, Viper just swept his feet from under him, make him flip forward and slam him back down to the ground. "Ow," said Naruto. "I'm sorry, brother. I thought you said you were ready," apologized Viper. "Again," was all Naruto said. Shifu clenched his teeth as he snapped his fingers again. This time it was Monkey and he was using a staff. Naruto also took a staff and blocked a few of Monkey's attacks but was, again, knocked off his feet. Monkey was surprised though, because not many have blocked more than one attack on their first try. "Again," said Naruto, making Shifu even angrier. He was now up against Crane, on the large jade green bowl. Naruto jumped at Crane and was close to grabbing his beak, until Crane flew back, causing Naruto to land in the bowl again, he said. Now he was against Mantis. Naruto managed to dodge a couple of Mantis's attacks but he also fell painfully again. This continued for the rest of the day and each time Naruto kept saying again. Shifu chuckled when he saw Naruto fall but frowned when he heard him say again. Tigress stepped forward, seeing that she never got to spar with Naruto, but Shifu stopped her. "I've been taking it easy on you, Fox. But no more," he said, stepping forward. "Your next opponent shall be me." Naruto panted as he stood. "Bring it." The Furious Five took nervous glances at each other. "Apart from Tigress, step forth," ordered Shifu. Naruto did so but Shifu grabbed him and started spinning him around the true path to victory is to find your opponent's weakness and make him suffer for it, he said, slamming Naruto down and bending his hand at an unnatural angle. "You're wrong," Naruto said through pain. "To take his strength and use it against him," continued Shifu as if he didn't hear Naruto. He kept throwing Naruto about like he was a simple toy until he finally falls or quits. Shifu now stood Naruto back and was grabbing hold of the fox's hair. "I won't quit. No matter what," shouted Naruto. Shifu growled before throwing Naruto up into the air and kicking him out of the training yard and down a large hill. "If he's smart then he won't come back up those steps," said Shifu before he went back inside. "But he will," said Monkey. "He's not going to quit, is he?" asked Viper. No, he won't. He told me that no matter what happens he is going to prove who he was, said Tigress before she jumped after Naruto. Should we follow? Asked Viper. Nah, it will be fine, said Mantis. Tigress finally caught up to Naruto on the steps. He was breathing heavily, and was badly bruised all over. She couldn't help but wince from just seeing him. Even so she helped him onto his Fae. Eden slowly went up the steps. What are you doing? Asked Naruto. Just shut up and walk, said Tigress. Eventually they had to stop from the amount of steps, because Tigress couldn't climb the steps with Naruto over her shoulders. They sat there watching the sunset in silence, until Tigress asked, why do you do this? Do what? Asked back Naruto. Continue to train, she said turning to look at him. Why do you not just walk away? Naruto smiled. I already told you, to prove that I am neither a disgrace or the Dragon Warrior, but I am simply Naruto Uzumaki and nothing else. I still don't understand. Naruto stayed silent until he spoke. My life before coming to this valley was not a happy one. For some reason, the village that I lived in feared me and they did not hesitate to show it. My village had a legend about a nine-tailed demon fox. It decimated the village, killing hundreds. When it was defeated, it said that it shall return. The day I was born, they all feared me just for having 9 tails. He said sadly. I never knew my parents. They died the day I was born, so I was raised in an orphanage for a few years. Eventually they kicked me out, so I lived on the street. One day though, I had enough of the village, so I left and traveled. Of course I was still young there, so I didn't take any supplies. I found myself in the Valley of Peace one day and started my new life. Eventually a man and his daughter found me and took me in. Ever since then I have been making ramen and now I'm here trying to learn Kung Fu. Tigress was surprised at what Naruto had said. Their lives were similar, and she always thought that nobody would be the same as her. The reason I am not leaving is because if I give up then I would be proving those villagers right, and that I can't do anything. I just can't do that. So when I told you to leave, she trailed off. It made me remember what they all said. In truth I was planning on leaving until Ogwe spoke to me and then you. So if anything I should be thanking you, he said with a smile. Even after everything, he is saying thank you. She thought I'm sorry for everything that happened, she said, clearly not used to apologizing. Naruto chuckled and motioned for them both to go back to the temple. That night, Naruto squirmed and winced as Mantis used acupuncture to help with his wounds. I thought you said acupuncture would make me feel better, said Naruto. Trust me, it will, said Mantis as he stabbed Naruto again. Tigress sat against a wall with an amused smirk. And Viper was sitting in front of Naruto, holding a picture of an animal. It's just not easy finding the right nerve points under all this fur. Mantis stabbed him again, causing Naruto to yelp. Maybe you should look at this again, said Viper, holding the picture up. Oh, okay, said Mantis, realizing where to go next. I know Master Shifu is trying to inspire me and all, but if I didn't know any better, I'd say he was trying to get rid of me. Mantis and Viper looked at each other before looking back at Naruto and smiled nervously. Tigress chuckled. It's alright, Naruto already knows what Master Shifu is doing. You do? Asked a surprised Viper. Yeah, I kind of figured it when he shouted at me that I am not the Dragon Warrior, Naruto explained. I know he can seem kind of heartless, but he wasn't always like that, said Mantis. According to legend, there was once a time when Master Shifu actually used to smile, said Viper. Nope, can't see it, said Naruto before getting stabbed again. But that was before Viper was cut off by Tigress. Tai Lung, she said with a frown. Through his wall, Crane said, yeah, we're not really supposed to talk about him. Well, if he's going to be staying here, he should know, said Tigress. Who's Tai Lung? Asked Naruto before yelping. Do you mind stopping for a minute? He asked Mantis, who just jumped off him. Tai Lung was one of Master Shifu's students. They called him a prodigy, a genius. He even mastered the 1,000 scrolls of Kung Fu, said Tigress, but to Master Shifu, he was more than just a student. He was his son. Naruto's eyes widened at this. Shifu found him as a cub and he raised him as his son. And when the boy showed talent for Kung Fu, Shifu trained him. He believed in him. He told him he was destined for greatness. But it was never enough for Tai Lung, she said, frowning. He wanted the Dragon Scroll, but Ogwe saw darkness in his heart and refused. What happened then? asked Naruto. He was outraged. He laid waste to the valley. He tried to take the scroll by force. And Shifu had to destroy what he had created. But how could he? Shifu loved Tai Lung like he had ever loved anyone before. She continued with memories of her trying kung fu or since. And now he has a chance to make things right. To train the true dragon warrior, she said looking into his eyes. Unfortunately you treat things like a joke, she said with a smirk. Naruto was about to say something before his face froze in a funny way. Oh. That is it, shouted Tigress, extending her claws. Wait, shouted Mantis landing on Naruto's shoulder. My fault. I accidentally tweaked his facial nerve. Naruto fell forward to reveal hundreds of needles, embedded in him and may have also stopped his heart. Training room. Shifu sat in the dark, with only a candle next to him. He meditated and chanted inner peace. His ear twitched but he thought nothing of it. Ner peace. His ear twitched again and he shouted, would whoever is making that flapping sound quiet down. He stopped and heard nothing, so he went back to chanting inner but was interrupted when a duck crashed landed behind him. He turned around and smiled seeing the familiar duck. Oh, Zung. Excellent. I could use some good news right now, he said, making Zung freeze. Peach Tree Hill. Master. Master, shouted Shifu as he ran up the steps. Obway was standing next to the tree, going through a kung fu stance until he was interrupted. It's very bad news. Ah, Shifu, there is just news. There is no good or bad, said the turtle. Master, your vision was right. Tai Lung has broken out of prison. He's on his way. That made Obway stop. That is bad news. If you do not believe that the dragon warrior cannot stop him. Shifu's eye twitched. The fox. Master, that fox is not the dragon warrior. He wasn't even meant to be here. It was an accident. There are no accidents, said back Obway. Shifu sighed. Yes, I know. You said that already. Twice. Obway chuckled. Well, that was no accident, either. Thrice muttered Shifu. My old friend. The fox will never fulfill his destiny, nor you yours, until you let go of the illusion of control, advised Obway. Illusion, repeated Shifu. Yes, look at this tree, Shifu, he said indicatively. Into the tree next to them. I cannot make it blossom when it suits me, nor make it bear fruit before its time. Yes, but there are things we can control, said Shifu before he kicked the tree, making multiple peaches fall out. I can control when the fruit will fall. One peach then fell and hit Shifu's head, causing Obway to chuckle. And I can control. He grabbed a fallen peach, threw it into the air, and jumped after it. He then sliced it in half with a chop and landed where to plant the seed. He finished before punching a hole in the ground. He quickly grabbed the peach seed and threw it into the hole. That is no illusion, master. Yes, said Obway, walking forward, but no matter what you do, that seed will grow into a peach tree. You may wish for an apple or an orange, but you will get a peach. But a peach cannot defeat Tai Lung, shouted Shifu. Maybe it can. Obway then bent forward and buried the hole that held the seed. If you are willing to guide it, to nurture it, to believe in it. But how? How? Questioned Shifu, almost desperately. I need your help, master. No, you just need to believe. Promise me, Shifu. Promise me you will believe. I will try, said Shifu. Suddenly, sakura petals started to gather. Good, said Obway. With a smile. My time has come. Shifu's eyes widened. You must continue this journey without me, he said, giving Shifu his staff. What are you? Wait. Obway walked to the edge of the hill. Master. You can't leave me. Obway turned around and bowed to Shifu, with a smile. You must believe. Master. Obway suddenly started to turn into sakura petals and followed the wind with Shifu watching in sadness. Temple roof. Tigress sat on the roof and stared at the moon. Hearing a noise, she turned and saw Naruto. Hey, he greeted. She just nodded and turned back to look at the moon, with Naruto joining her after a minute. Why did you tell me about your past? She asked. Smiling, he shrugged. To be honest, I don't know. She turned to look at him. I don't know why I told you. I just had this nagging feeling in the back of my head, screaming at me to tell you. He looked at her. You didn't have an easy life either, did you? Although hesitant, Tigress answered, having the same feeling of telling him her past. I also grew up in an orphanage. It wasn't very good though, because everybody was terrified of me. But that was only because of my temper and monstrous strength. I always got in trouble. One night I left my room and tried to play with the other children, but they ran away from me because of my fangs and claws. I was sent to my room after that because I lost my temper. Eventually the caretakers called Master Shifu for help and he visited me. He talked to me and managed to convince me to try dominoes. It was a game where you have to be very patient and careful. But because of my strength I either broke the pieces or knocked them over. She chuckled. I was a very impatient child, so I always lost my temper. Thankfully with time, I managed to play dominoes without doing anything wrong. I even showed everyone at the orphanage and they all became my friends because they got over their fears. But the parents didn't, so I was never adopted. Master Shifu took me in after a while and now here we are. We did have similar lives, commented Naruto. They eyed silent after a while before Naruto stood and stretched. Come on. What? Asked Tigress in confusion. Naruto grabbed her hand and pulled her up to stand. Let's go. He started pulling her along the roof. Where are you taking me? She almost demanded. In response Naruto jumped off the side of the roof with Tigress along with him. When they landed, Tigress looked around and saw that they were in a sparring ring. Let's have a spar, said Naruto, jumping back and into a stance. It took Tigress a moment before she realized what he said. Smirking, she took her famous tiger style of combat and waited. After a few minutes of simply staring at each other, they both ran at the same time. They traded blows, Naruto taking them rather than giving them. This lasted for over an hour and neither lost their smiles. Eventually they had to stop, because they were both out of breath. Are you alright? She asked, knowing he took a lot of hits. I'll be fine, I'm a fast healer, he said back. What about you? He asked, seeing that he got her a couple of times, even though it was out of pure luck. I'll be fine, she said back. You are getting better. Thanks, he said. They walked over to a bench and sat down. Are you feeling better? She gave him a confused look. When you told me about your past, I could tell it was making you more depressed. So I sparred with you to make you feel better. Oh. Thank you. She said back, confused. No problem. The second he said that, they heard the sound of running footsteps. Turning around they saw Crane, Monkey, Viper, Mantis, and Shifu running towards them. There you are, shouted Shifu. Master, said Tigress. What have you two been doing? He shouted. We were sparring, said Naruto with a raised eyebrow. You don't have time for that. He shouted. Tai Lung has escaped from prison and he is coming for the Dragon Scroll. What? Shouted both Naruto and Tigress. You are the only one who can stop him. He's actually free, and you expect me to stop him? Shouted Naruto before he indicated to himself. What about Master Ogwe? He did it before, so he can do it again. Ogwe cannot. Shifu shouted before lowering his head. Not anymore, he said softly. It was then that everybody noticed Shifu holding Ogwe's staff. They widened at this before they all lowered their heads. Our only hope is the Dragon Warrior. But what about us? Asked Tigress. Let us stop Tai Lung. This is what you trained us for. No, this is not your destiny to defeat Tai Lung, but his. He shouted, pointing to Naruto, who wasn't there anymore. Where'd he go? Naruto ran towards a set of steps, but his path was blocked when Shifu landed in front of him. You cannot leave. A real warrior never quits. Who said I was quitting? Asked Naruto. I was going to fight Tai Lung now to stop him, he said, running past Shifu. Without moving from his spot, Shifu used the staff and brought Naruto back around. If you leave now, you will only die. So what? Shouted Naruto. If it's my destiny, then I will win. You may be the Dragon Warrior, but you cannot defeat him now. But I am not the Dragon Warrior. Tigress is. He shouted, making Shifu freeze. You and I both know that Ogwe was going to choose her. Besides, you never believed that I was the Dragon Warrior. Yes, I never believed you were the Dragon Warrior. But now I ask you to trust in your master as I have come to trust in mine. You are not my master. Shouted Naruto, pushing the staff away from him. And I'm not the Dragon Warrior. Then why didn't you quit? You knew I wanted you gone, yet you stayed. Yeah, I stayed, but not for you, he said before looking towards the temple. He immediately saw Tigress staring at them from a distance and Sue LD tell that she could hear them. I stayed to prove that I am not the Dragon Warrior but simply Naruto. But I can change you. I can turn you into the Dragon Warrior. And I will, shouted Shifu desperately. Naruto glared at Shifu, and it made the master take a step back. You can't Tai Lung is on his way here right now. You do not have the time to train me and you know it. So how are you going to turn me into the Dragon Warrior? Shifu just stared as he tried to think of an answer. How? Questioned Naruto. How? Shifu remained quiet and Naruto shouted. How? I don't know. Shifu finally shouted. He realized what he said and sighed. I don't know. I thought so, Naruto said softly. He walked and Shifu didn't stop him this time. Naruto took a step past Shifu before stopping, so their backs were to each other. He looked towards Tigress again and could tell she was sad. Train Tigress, she is the true Dragon Warrior and God knows she deserves it, he said, taking another step. Goodbye, and Naruto left the temple. Naruto continued to walk and only managed to get to the middle of the village before Tigress stepped out of the shadows. Where are you going? She asked, already knowing the answer. You know already. I am going to fight Tai Lung, he said seriously. But you know you will lose. So, I don't have anything left in this world apart from Ichiraku's, he said, before seeing Tigress looking hurt. What about us? The five? She asked. Naruto's eyes widened at this. Don't leave this village. You still have a chance if you can give Shifu a chance. Naruto stayed silent before taking a step forward. Seeing this, Tigress stepped into his way. Please move, Tigress. No, she said. I don't want to fight you, he said. You don't have to, she said before Naruto dropped to his knees. His vision became hazy. I'm sorry, he heard Tigress say before falling unconscious. She quickly caught him and held him. She then pulled out a dart from the back of his neck and looked. Seeing the rest of the five appear, Mantis was also holding a blowpipe, showing he was the one that fired the dart. Without saying any words, Tigress motioned for the others to go on ahead. They did so and she sighed, before turning towards a restaurant, Ichiraku's. She dragged Naruto towards it before knocking on the door. After a minute, Ayame answered it. Hello, she said sleepily. Her eyes finally focused and she gasped seeing Naruto unconscious. Naruto. It's all right, he's just unconscious. Can you please show me to his room so I can lay him down? Yeah, sure, Master Tigress, said Ayame nervously. Thank you, said Tigress before following the cat inside. She went inside Naruto's room and frowned seeing it so bare. She laid him on his bed and looked at him. I'm sorry it had to come to this, but it had to be done. Thank you for everything, she said smiling before leaving the room. When she left the room she turned to Ayame. Can you please tell him that I am sorry and that I hope he makes the right decision? Sure, said Ayame with a smile. You like him, don't you? Excuse me, never mind. I'll tell Naruto that you apologized. Thank you. Goodbye, said Tigress before leaving. However, her mind was thinking over what Ayame had asked. The next morning, Naruto woke up and instantly realized where he was. His room at Ichiraku's. It took him a moment to remember last night's events. Frowning, he stood up and looked in the mirror. I'm sorry, he heard Tigress's voice in his head. He sighed before opening the door and going downstairs. When he entered the room, he saw Ayame walk up to him. How did I get here? He asked. Master Tigress dragged you here. She wanted me to tell you that she is sorry and that she hopes you make the right decision, she answered. I see, he said softly. They stayed silent for a moment. She seemed really concerned and sad for you, said Ayame. Can I ask what happened? Sighing, Naruto said, let's just say trouble is coming. And if I had to guess, then Tigress and the other five went to face that threat. I was planning on going, but that turned into me arguing with Master Shifu and hurting Tigress, he said, remembering seeing the hurt in her eyes. He turned and looked out the window and stared at the temple. I guess she was right. About? Asked Chuki as he entered the room. Hearing the conversation. Apparently only the Dragon Warrior can defeat the threat, he said, trying not to scare them. Because of Tai Lung I tried to go now, because of my brashness. But I am not fully trained. It was only now that Shifu wanted to properly train me. You might as well go now, said Chuki. Probably. I'll come back soon and I'll even try to bring the five as well, said Naruto before leaving. He sighed before going to the temple. Peach Tree Hill. Shifu sighed as he sat on the hill. He felt sad because he felt like he failed Obwe. He then heard a noise, which piqued his curiosity, so he went inside the temple to find out what it was. After a few minutes he opened the doors to the training room, believing this place contained the noisemaker. But he found it strangely empty. He looked around and could only see the training dummy. He heard the noise again and turned towards the bedchambers. After another few minutes he entered the building and followed the noise until he found himself next to the kitchen. It sounded like someone was fighting inside, so he looked, only to see Naruto smash through a cupboard and pull out a box of biscuits. He sighed before putting it back and glancing towards the door. He froze seeing the red panda. What are you doing in here? Asked Shifu as he looked at the destruction. Making ramen. I do this when I'm bored, he replied, but I can't find the damn fish cakes. Oh, never mind then, said Shifu, turning around and walking away. He stepped past the door before looking at Naruto. I just thought you someone else. The fish cakes are on the top shelf, he said, walking away. What Naruto didn't know though was that Shifu hid himself against the wall. Widening his eyes, Naruto ran for the shelf. All Shifu could hear was some smashing and Naruto jumping. He quickly ran into the room and widened his eyes in surprise. Naruto was doing splits on a shelf and growling as he went through the shelf. He turned and stared at Shifu. You lied to me, he accused. Look at you, said Shifu as he stepped forward. Yeah, I know, I annoy you, said Naruto, about to climb down. No, I mean, how did you get up there? He asked. I don't know, I jumped. Yet you are 10 feet off the ground, said Shifu, and have done a perfect split. I told you that I practiced, said Naruto, but I didn't train on how to get down to the ground when you high in the air and doing splits. Besides, he said before falling and slamming into the ground, it was probably just an accident, he groaned out. A cookie rolled across the ground and landed in front of Shifu. He chuckled before picking it up and pointing it to Naruto. There are no accidents, he quoted. Form Ogwe, come with me, he said. An hour later, both Naruto and Shifu walked up a path that led up a mountain. Neither were tired, but Naruto's feet were sore as well as his back as he carried a large and heavy backpack. Can you please tell me where we're going? Asked Naruto. Shifu didn't answer, but they eventually made it to a foggy area. Shifu sat down and meditated next to a lake, and Naruto sat down, putting his feet in said lake. What is this place? Asked Naruto as he looked around. Fox, we do not wash out feet in the pool of sacred tears, said Shifu with his eyes closed. Pool of sacred tears, repeated Naruto, taking his feet out the water. Yes, said Shifu, walking forward. This is where Ogwe unraveled the mysteries of harmony and focus. This is the birthplace of Kung Fu, he said, making Naruto's eyes widen. Shifu jumped into the air and landed on a large piece of rock, taking a stance that ordered respect. Do you want to learn Kung Fu? Yes, said Naruto in awe. Then I am you, master. He shouted. Yes, master, shouted Naruto as he bowed. Shifu smirked as he said, don't bow, it doesn't suit you. Naruto chuckled before bowing again. Yes, master. He said, with the both of them laughing. After a while they entered a field and Naruto stood opposite Shifu, with his fists at his sides. When you focus on Kung Fu, when you concentrate, you suck. Naruto's smile fell off of his face. But perhaps that is my fault. I cannot train you like I have trained the five. I now see that the way to get through to you is with this, he said, showing a bowl of ramen. This is made straight from Ichiraku's. Naruto was drooling at the sight of those heavenly noodles. Ichiraku noodles, he whispered. His stomach growled. I am hungry. Good, said Shish. If you chuckling when you have been trained, you may eat, he said whilst eating some of the ramen. Let us begin, he said with Naruto glaring at him. They started off training with Naruto doing sit-ups on a high branch with Shifu on his legs holding the bowl of ramen. The branch creaked before breaking off, part way. Shifu quickly jumped backwards and landed on some stones. Naruto quickly grabbed the branch and caught the bowl, using it to catch the falling ramen. The branch broke off, and Naruto with it. Shifu quickly caught the bowl and ramen, before drinking some of its broth. Near a bamboo forest, Shifu gave Naruto a bowl of ramen with chopsticks and ran away. Naruto licked his lips before throwing away the chopsticks and trying to drink from the bowl. Shifu, however, appeared with his bamboo staff and whacked Naruto every second. Naruto managed to block a few attacks, but Shifu then smashed the bowl out of his hands, making the fox frown. They were then in a field with Shifu on a rock, holding a fish cake. Naruto moved around the rock trying to grab the fish cake, but Shifu kept moving out off the way. This lasted for over an hour and neither gave up. During the night, Naruto tried to eat the ramen that Shifu put in front of him, whilst doing push-ups over a hot coals. Shifu couldn't help but chuckle in amusement when he watched this. At sunrise, they both stood on top of a mountain. Shifu stood on one leg and moved around on the spot through fluid motions. Naruto was doing the same whilst balancing 13 bowls of ramen. One on each limb, one on his head, and one on each of his tails. In the middle of the forest, Naruto rolled past a rock whilst carrying an empty bowl. Right in front of him was a black pot, filled with ramen, and he was to fill the bowl. Just as he was about to fill the bowl, Shifu appeared behind him, holding his staff. Just as Naruto neared the pot, Shifu whacked his ass, and Naruto had to block all of Shifu's attacks. Naruto managed to fill his bowl, but Shifu poked him in the stomach and the bowl flew up into the air. He jumped, caught the bowl with the ramen in it, and landed on his staff. Shifu drank from the bowl just as Naruto kicked the bottom of the staff. Without looking, Shifu jumped and the staff slammed onto Naruto's head before Shifu landed back on the staff. On top of a rock Naruto stood, with Shifu on the opposite rock and fireflies were glowing around them. Both went through a kung fu stance with Naruto mimicking Shifu perfectly. Both then did one-handed finger push ups and switched arms when they went up. Shifu attacked Naruto in the bamboo forest and Naruto dodged, blocked, and deflected all attacks. To make things interesting, Naruto jumped over Shifu with ease whilst they both fought. During the sunset, Naruto stood on the mountain and went through a very complex kung fu stance, making it look like the easiest thing in the world. And he did it with a smile. They now both sat opposite each other, against a stone table, with a bowl of ramen on top. Shifu picked up his chopsticks and motioned towards the ramen. "After you, fox." "Just like that?" asked Naruto suspiciously. "No sit-ups. No 10-mile hikes. I vowed to train you, and you have been trained. You are free to eat," he said, indicating to the ramen again. Naruto rubbed his chin in suspicion but shrugged. He grabbed a pair of chopsticks and broke them apart. "Enjoy," said Shifu with a smile. Naruto reached for the ramen, took some noodles, and tried to eat it. Tried, being the key word because Shifu, using his incredible speed, ate the noodles. "Hey!" shouted Naruto. "I said you are free to eat. Have some noodles," said Shifu with a smile. Naruto's eyes narrowed before trying again. He grabbed a fish cake, only for Shifu to kick it out of his hand and eat it. Both their eyes narrowed at each other. "You are free to eat," repeated Shifu. "Am I?" shouted Naruto. "Are you?" shouted back Shifu before flipping his chopsticks expertly. Naruto just made a weird sound before clipping his chopsticks against each other, seeing how he couldn't do what Shifu did. He smirked as he slammed his hand down onto the bowl, spilling its contents into the air. Shifu jumped into the air and slurped up the noodles and broth along with everything else, apart from a single fish cake. Seeing this, Naruto jumped for it and made it look like that he grabbed it with his chopsticks, but he just aimed to eat it. Shifu saw this and grabbed the fish cake before Naruto could eat it. And then landed next to the bowls. Naruto just landed on his head, next to the stone table. Naruto jumped onto his feet and quickly used his chopsticks to make Shifu drop the fish cake into a bowl. They both used their chopsticks to attack each other as they tried to grab the cake. Shifu flipped the bowl and then flipped the others. He then started moving the bowl's about with incredible speed and Naruto managed to follow with his eyes. Naruto quickly stopped Shifu and flipped the bowl, which contained the fish cake, whilst giving a smirk of victory. They fought with chopsticks again and Naruto managed to grab the little cake. Shifu however kept whipping Naruto's fingers with his own. Having enough of the bowl, Naruto swept the table and kicked the fish cake up into the air. Seeing this, Shifu threw his chopstick and stabbed the fish cake into a tree branch. They both ran for it and Shifu jumped onto Naruto's shoulder and then jumped for the cake. Naruto used his chopsticks and grabbed Shifu's leg, bringing him back to the ground. They both looked and saw the fish cake beginning to slip away from the lone chopstick. Shifu kicked Naruto's chopsticks away and quickly grabbed his arm, flipping him onto the ground. Naruto, however, landed on his feet and they both fought each other. Shifu then pushed Naruto away and looked to see the fish cake falling. Naruto flipped onto his feet and caught Shifu by surprise, as he pushed the red fox away. He ran forward and tried to eat the fish cake. Unfortunately Shifu closed Naruto's mouth and the fish cake rolled off his head and onto Shifu's arm. Naruto hit his arm and the cake flew up, but Shifu jumped and kicked it away. Naruto ran after it and Shifu stayed for a moment, smiling. He threw away his chopsticks and ran after the fox, grabbing his staff. He jumped into the air and knocked the fish cake away from Naruto's mouth, and tried to hit the fox. Naruto blocked the attack and retaliated. Both kept hitting the fish cake away from the other as they fought expertly. Naruto spun around, kicked the fish cake back into the air, and blocked Shifu's attack. They spun around and Naruto stood on Shifu's staff. Suddenly, he jumped into the air and flipped backwards, much to Shifu's amazement. He landed on the ground and caught the fish cake with the chopsticks he never dropped. He looked back to Shifu, and the old master bowed, allowing Naruto to eat the fish cake. Smirking, Naruto threw the fish cake into Shifu's hand, surprising him. Seeing the questioning look, Naruto said, "I'm not hungry." Shifu smirked before throwing the fish cake away. Master, said Naruto as he bowed in respect. With the furious five, the five made it to a bridge and stopped. On the other side stood Tai Lung, and he growled seeing the five. He roared and then ran on all fours, over the bridge. Seeing this, Tigress shouted, "Cut it!" And the others cut the rope to the bridge. It began to fall and Tai Lung jumped. Seeing that he was going to make it, Tigress jumped and back-flip kicked him away from the edge. Quickly, the rest of the five grabbed the rope to steady the bridge as both Tigress and Tai Lung landed on it. He moved and the bridge turned sideways as he spoke. "Where is the dragon warrior? How do you know that you're not looking at her?" she asked without taking her eyes away from them. Laughing, he replied, "You think I'm a fool?" He dropped his smile. "I know you are not the dragon warrior. None of you. I heard how he fell out of the sky in a ball of fire. That he's a warrior unlike anything the world has ever seen." As he spoke, he took steps closer to Tigress, making her growl. Monkey looked confused. "Naruto?" he asked. "So that is his name?" Naruto repeated. Tai Lung, "Finally, a worthy opponent. Our battle shall be legendary," he shouted before Tigress attacked. "You shall not touch him," she shouted in anger. They fought and each attack was blocked or dodged. Some hits got through but Tigress wasn't landing many. She then jumped, caught his head with her feet, and swung him off the bridge. He then grabbed the rope and spun the bridge around, making the other five hold on even more. Tigress had to hold onto the planks to be safe. Tai Lung jumped high into the air and aimed a punch at Tigress. She saw this and flipped the bridge again, making him punch through a plank. This did not stop him or even slow him down as they continued their fight, with him on top of the bridge, and her on the under. He grabbed her foot and swung her through some planks and let her go. She quickly used her claws and latched into his hand, making him roar in pain. They continued their fight and Monkey grabbed Crane and Viper's rope. "We got this. Go help her," he shouted. It was then that Tai Lung kicked Tigress between the planks and he then kicked her, so hard that she went flying through many of the planks. Just as she was about to fall, Tai Lung spun the bridge again and made the ropes wrap around her neck, cutting her off from breathing. Viper slithered in front of Tai Lung and whipped his face. This caused him to let go of the ropes and for Tigress to fall. Crane quickly caught her and made sure she was all right. Viper managed to wrap herself around Tai Lung's neck and hand, and used this to make him punch himself. He was about to fall and Viper tried to get away, but he quickly grabbed her neck. "Monkey!" she strangled out. "Go!" shouted Mantis, taking the last rope. However, because of his size, he struggled and said, "What was I thinking?" Monkey ran as fast as he could and flip-kicked Tai Lung away from Viper, and to the other side of the bridge. He got back up and ran across the ropes and was clearly angry. Seeing a plan, Tigress shouted Mantis. He got the message and whipped the ropes, causing a large wave to appear. Monkey and Viper jumped away, but Tai Lung wasn't so lucky as he got hit in the face now. Shouted Tigress and they all ran, apart from Mantis. Monkey jumped forward and kicked Tai Lung in the face. Viper then jumped off of Monkey's shoulder and whipped Tai Lung into the air. Crane used his beak to cut the rope and used it to tie up Tai Lung. To end it, Tigress used all of her strength and open-palmed Tai Lung, forcing him to the other side as he roared in rage. Mantis quickly brought back the five and let the bridge go. They all sighed in relief and relaxed. However, A sound caught Tigress's attention. Looking, she gasped no when she saw the bridge rope start to spin around the mountain. They all watched with bated breath as the rope flew up. But nothing was there. They all sighed in relief again, but Tigress widened her eyes. Before she could do anything, Tai Lung landed behind all them. Shifu, taught you well, Tai Lung commented calmly. Just by looking at him you could tell he wasn't even winded. He then suddenly rushed forward and hit Monkey in the chest, making a blue pulse appear and paralyzed him. But he didn't teach you everything, he said before rushing at all of them. Jade Palace. You have done well, Fox, commented Shifu as he and Naruto entered the temple grounds. Thank you, master, he said back. He smirked as he used his tails to push Shifu and make him stumble. The mark of a true warrior is humility, but you have definitely done well, he said, punching Naruto in the side. They both laughed until they heard the sound of wings flapping. They frowned and turned, widening their eyes when they saw Crane flying weakly and holding the rest of the 5. He crash-landed, dropping the others onto the ground. No, shouted Naruto, going to check if they are all right. Are they dead? No, they're breathing, he said, thankful. We were no match for his nerve attack, gasped out Crane. He's gotten stronger, said Shifu as he hit a few points on Mantis, allowing him to move again. Stronger, repeated Naruto as Shifu hit a few points on Monkey. Unfortunately, Monkey made a sudden punch and hit Naruto in the chin. Sorry, Naruto, he apologized. But Naruto didn't hear him and he stared at Tigress. He walked past Shifu as he moved Viper about. He knelt down and didn't say anything. Shifu walked over and hit her a few times. She gasped for breath and weakly said, I thought we could stop him. He could have killed you, said Naruto as he helped her onto her feet. Why didn't he? Asked Mantis. So you could come back and strike fear into our hearts. But it won't work, said Shifu. No, it won't, said Naruto as Tigress leaned against him. You can defeat him, Fox, shouted Shifu. But how can I if they couldn't? He asked. You will have the one thing that no one else does, said Shifu. What? Asked Naruto. They all walked silently towards the Hall of Heroes and stopped in front of the moon pool. The dragon scroll. He asked as they all gazed upon the scroll that was on the ceiling. You really think I'm ready? You are, Naruto, said Shifu with a smile. He then walked over to Ogwe's staff, picked it up, and walked to the edge of the moon pool. He stayed silent for a moment, out of respect. Suddenly he twirled the staff and made the sakura petals, which were on the pool, float. He started twirling the staff and making the petals float higher and higher. Then, a single petal touched the capsule that contained the scroll and managed to make it fall. When it got close enough, Shifu thrusted Ogwe's staff forward and caught the scroll. It only just touched the pool, making a single ripple. He turned around and presented it to Naruto. Behold, the dragon scroll. It is yours. What happens when I read it? Asked Naruto as he took the scroll. Legends say you will be able to hear a butterfly's wing beat. Really? Yes, and see light in the deepest of caves. You will feel the universe in motion around you. Whoa, said Naruto with wide eyes. Read it, Naruto, and fulfill your destiny. Read it and become the Dragon Warrior. Nodding, Naruto looked at the capsule and took in its details. It was a red tube with a gold dragon design on it, and it had green ends as well. He took a deep breath and opened it. He stopped for a moment before taking the scroll out. It had a similar design to the capsule. Everybody held their breath as Naruto opened it and they could see his eyes widen. I don't believe it, he whispered. What? Asked Shifu. It's blank, he replied, showing the scroll. No, shouted Shifu, turning away. I am forbidden to look upon. He stopped and then snatched the scroll away from Naruto. He looked at it from every angle, but it did not change. It only showed a gold sheet that held a hazy reflection. Blank. I don't understand, he whispered to himself. Ogwe was wiser than us all, but this doesn't make sense. He did pick me by accident, Naruto said out loud. You said that only the Dragon Warrior can read and use the scroll, but I can't, he sighed. But who will stop Tai Lung? Asked Viper. He will destroy everything, and everyone, said Crane. No, said Shifu as he gave the scroll back to Naruto. Evacuate the valley. You must protect the villagers from Tai Lung's rage, he ordered. What about you, master? Asked Tigress with concern in her eyes. I will fight him. What? Asked Naruto with wide eyes. I will hold him off long enough for everyone to escape. But, Shifu, he'll kill you, said Naruto. Smiling, Shifu said, then I will have finally paid for my mistake. No one said anything. Listen to me, all of you. It is time for you all to continue your journey without me. I am very proud to have been your master, he said, bowing to his students. Everybody, including Naruto, bowed in an instant. Shifu turned around and walked to the moon pool as Tigress took Naruto's arm and dragged him away. When they got to the bottom of the temple, they saw that the entire valley was nearly in panic. Most of the villagers were already leaving and some were Saint terrified. We got to get them out safely, said Tigress as she leant against Naruto for support. Her, and the rest of the 5, were still injured from their battle. Come little one, said Monk. Why is he picked up a baby piglet? Let's find your mama. With that he ran off. Tigress turned towards her friends. Viper, gather the southern villagers. Mantis, the north, she ordered with them nodding. They left and she turned to the bird Crane. Light the way, she said, giving him the lantern. Naruto watched as the 5 left, one after the other. He felt terrible, like he failed everybody just by not being the dragon warrior. He sighed and watched as Tigress helped Ayame with her family's belongings. Sitting down, he pulled out the dragon scroll and stared at the empty page. How are you feeling? Asked Chuki as he approached Naruto. Awful, replied Naruto without looking away. Chuki sighed before sitting next to Naruto. I'm sorry if things didn't work out. Perhaps it just wasn't meant to be. That's what everybody else is saying, he said, indicating the passing villagers that are pointing and laughing. Neither noticed that Tigress came back over and stood near them. It was then that Chuki had an idea. You know, I remember when we took you in. You were just as depressed as you are now. But when I gave you that small bowl of ramen, it was as if you gained new life. Naruto smiled at that. I still remember when you constantly asked what was in the ramen that made it so special. I was going to tell you today because it was your birthday. Tigress's eyes widened at that, but I don't know. Naruto chuckled. Might as well. Okay then, said Chuki. The secret ingredient to make my ramen as it is. He paused for dramatic effect. Nothing. Both Naruto and Tigress looked confused. What? Nothing, Naruto repeated. Yep, he bellowed with a laugh. Nothing at all. There is no secret ingredient. Wait, so it's just regular ramen? Chuki smacked Naruto on the back of his head. Ow. Idiot, my ramen is not just regular ramen. He said my ramen is special because I believe it's special, that's all, he explained, standing by the way. I think you lady friend is here, he said, walking away. Naruto stood and looked at Tigress. I think I get it, he said. What? I still don't understand, she said, clearly confused. He smiled as he looked at T. He scroll again. There is nothing that can make it special, because it is already there, he said, seeing his reflection. He then turned and started running, until Tigress stopped him. Where are you going? She asked. To stop Tai Lung, he said, making her eyes widen. What? I am the dragon warrior after all, so I might as well, he said with a chuckle. She smiled as she looked down. Thank you. He smiled back before pulling her into an embrace. I should be thanking you. If it wasn't for you, the 5, or Master Shifu, then I would never be who I am now. And he stopped himself. And she said, wanting him to continue. And I'm thankful that I met you, he said, making her eyes widen. Before she could do anything, she froze when she felt him kiss her cheek. Make sure the loggers get away safely, he said, running up the steps. All Tigress could do was nod dumbly. She shook her head and smiled, feeling a blush on her cheeks, and was thankful that her fur covered it up. Be careful, Naruto, she whispered. Entrance to the Hall of Heroes. Shifu stood at the top to the steps just waiting. He knew he wouldn't have to wait long because he could already feel Tai Lung's presence close by. A storm had gathered and there was thunder. The thunder roared and Shifu closed his eyes before opening them and seeing Tai Lung in front of him. I have come home, master, he said, bowing. Shifu glared. This is no longer your home, and I am no longer your master, he said. Oh yes, said the snow leopard, you have a new favorite. So where is this Naruto? He asked, looking behind Shifu. He chuckled when he saw no one. Did I scare him off? This battle is between you and me, said Shifu. Tai Lung sighed and turned around. So that is how it's going to be. That is how it must be, said Shifu as he took a stance. Tai Lung growled before jumping high into the air and slam-kicked into the ground, where Shifu was. Only Shifu jumped back and into the temple bef. Or Tai Lung slammed into the ground, creating a small crater. He then kicked up a giant rock and kicked it towards Shifu. The red panda spun around before punching the rock into tiny pieces. How? Ever Tai Lung jumped through and punched Shifu in the face, making him fly and smash through the doors. Thankfully he landed safely. I rotted in that jail for 20 years because of your weakness, shouted Tai Lung as he walked in. Obeying you master is not weakness, shouted Shifu. You knew I was the dragon warrior. You always knew. But when Ogway said otherwise, what did you do? What did you do? Nothing, shouted Tai Lung with all the hate he had. You were not meant to be the dragon warrior. That was not my fault, shouted back Shifu. Not your fault, repeated Tai Lung as he approached Shifu, who filled my head with dream. He kicked a stand and Shifu jumped over it, who drove me to train until my bones cracked. He then picked up a shield and threw it. Shifu dodged and it lodged itself inside a pillar, who denied me my destiny. He then picked up a stand full of sharp weapons and threw them at Shifu. Thankfully the old master deflected all of the weapons with ease. Tai Lung then picked up a large cleaver-like blade and kicked it towards Shifu. With great skill, Shifu made it spin on his hand and slam it into the ground. It was never my decision to make. Tai Lung growled before jumping at Ogway's staff. He picked it up and said, "It is now." Shifu glared and ran at his traitorous student. He tried to jump kick him, but Tai Lung blocked it and kicked him back. They both jumped to the side, but Tai Lung used Ogway's staff to catch Shifu by the neck and slammed him to the ground. He began to put pressure on the staff, choking Shifu. "Give me the scroll. I would rather die," shouted back Shifu. Tai Lung growled and put even more pressure on the staff. Both struggled and finally the staff gave way. It broke in half and fell to the side. Shifu turned and stared sadly at it. A noise caught his attention, so he turned. He didn't have any time to block as Tai Lung kicked him into the wall, creating spider cracks. Both jumped into the pillars, with Tai Lung chasing Shifu. Suddenly the leopard caught Shifu and threw him to the roof. He then jumped and punched him through the roof, and high into the air. Shifu could do nothing as Tai Lung punched, clawed, and kicked him badly. Seeing an opening, he grabbed Tai Lung's arm and bent it backwards. He landed on Tai Lung's back and they started falling towards the temple. Narrowing his eyes, Tai Lung elbowed Shifu and switched positions. They smashed through the roof, and just as they were about to slam into the ground, Tai Lung let go of Shifu and kicked him into a pillar. Tai Lung was thrown back by the force and landed on a lantern. It ignited the floor, creating blue flames. He ran through it on all fours, making the fire stay on his paws. "All I ever did, I did to make you proud," he shouted, giving Shifu a barrage of punches. "Tell me how proud you are, Shifu." The punches became more ferocious. Tell me, he shouted, punching Shifu so hard, he flew towards the moon pool. When Shifu landed, parts of him were still smoking. Tai Lung stopped the flames as Shifu spoke. I have always been proud of you," said Shifu weakly. "From the first moment, I've been proud of you." This stopped Tai Lung for a moment, and it was my pride that blinded me. I loved you too much to see what you were becoming. What he looked Tai Lung in the eye. Was turning you into. I'm sorry. Tai Lung's eyes widened at this. Shifu was hopeful for a moment before Tai Lung's eyes narrowed and he grabbed him by the neck. "I don't want your apology," he growled out. He then lifted Shifu into the air. "I want my scroll." As Shifu struggled, Tai Lung looked to where the scroll was. "What?" he gasped out, when he didn't see the scroll. Angry, he slammed Shifu onto the ground. "Where is it?" "Dragon Warrior has taken the scroll halfway across China now," Shifu struggled to say. "You will never see that scroll, Tai Lung," he said, making Tai Lung extend his claws. "Never." Tai Lung raised his claw and was about to strike until someone shouted, "Hey." Looking, he saw a fox with 9 tails panting at the broken doors. "Too many stairs," he gasped out. "Who are you?" demanded Tai Lung. "Buddy, I am the Dragon Warrior," said Naruto as he controlled his breathing. "But you may call me Naruto," he said, taking a stance. "You?" questioned Tai Lung. "Him?" he asked rhetorically as he dropped Shifu. "He's a fox." He then looked at Naruto. "You're a fox with 9 tails. What are you going to do, big guy? Beat me with your furry tails?" he asked with a chuckle. "Don't tempt me," said back Naruto. Laughing, he pulled the scroll out and said, "No, I'm gonna use this." "You want it? Come get it," he taunted. Tai Lung appeared and punched Naruto in the face, making him fly back and dropping the scroll. Finally, he shouted, Naruto flew back before his tails cushioned him, landing against a pillar. Using this to his advantage, Naruto jumped forward and used the momentum to speed up. He then flew forward and punched Tai Lung away from the scroll and smashed through a pillar. Naruto couldn't help but wince. "That had to hurt," he said. His eyes widened when he saw Tai Lung running towards him. Naruto shouted before running away, but just as he got to the door, Tai Lung slammed into his back. The force of it made the both of them fly over the steps that led up to the temple. Naruto quickly caught the dropped scroll and looked to see Tai Lung grabbing him. All he could do was give a foxy grin. This angered Tai Lung as he kneed Naruto in the gut, making Naruto shoot away. Naruto slammed onto a roof, bounced off, and then landed on a tree whilst bending it to the ground. Tai Lung jumped after, but Naruto smirked as he let go of the tree and allowed it to smack Tai Lung away. This did not stop him, however, as quickly ran to Naruto and kicked him over the steps. "That scroll is mine," he shouted and jumped after Naruto. He grabbed the scroll, but Naruto would not let go. As this was happening, they kept bounding on the steps with Tai Lung on the bottom every time. They then both slammed through a building roof, causing Naruto to let go of the scroll. He landed next to a pot of noodles and Tai Lung landed on a roof. He looked and saw the scroll near Tai Lung. And then he saw the noodles next to him, giving him an idea. As Tai Lung neared the scroll, Naruto used the noodles as a whip to pull the scroll away from the leopard. Unfortunately, he could do nothing as the scroll bounced off of his face and flew away. Tai Lung jumped after it, but Naruto quickly caught his legs, forced him to the ground and landed on a cart. Naruto stood on its handles, so when Tai Lung landed, it forced Naruto into the air. The fox couldn't help but grin at this. It was a lot of fun to him. He then noticed that he had noodles on him, so he slurped them all up. His scroll landed inside a lantern and Naruto in a small bamboo garden. Some rustling was heard and Naruto came out on some bamboo stilts. He tried to keep his balance, but he couldn't and he knocked over some frying pans. The scroll fell from the lantern and rolled away, to where Tai Lung landed. He was about to take the scroll until a pan slammed into his face, creating an indent. Smirking, Naruto hit all the pans and they all landed upside down with the scroll under one of them. Tai Lung removed the pan from his head and watched as Naruto started to move the pans about, with incredible speed. "Lightning!" shouted Naruto. Angered, Tai Lung kicked all the pans away and reached for the scroll, but Naruto stopped him with his stilts. He kept stopping Tai Lung with them and he had enough. The leopard separated the stilts and grabbed the scroll whilst laughing. However, Naruto landed on top of him. The scroll started to roll away and Tai Lung flung Naruto off of him. Looking at where he landed, Naruto saw fireworks surrounded him. As Tai Lung neared the scroll, he heard a sound. Turning, whilst running, he saw Naruto in a cart full of lit fireworks speed towards him. His eyes widened before he got pushed out of the way when Naruto barged into him. Naruto grabbed the scroll and smiled until the bottom of the cart slammed into a rock and sent Naruto flying into a wall, head first. The scroll went up and landed inside a stone dragon's mouth. He turned and saw Tai Lung running towards him. He turned back and took a deep breath before jumping to a ledge. Tai Lung watched as Naruto jumped on the wall and got closer. "The scroll has given him power." "No," he shouted as he jumped, and kicked the wall with all of his strength. This caused the entire building to start fall. The force of the kick also managed to make the dragon head smash up and make the scroll fly away. Naruto quickly climbed and started to run. But the tiles falling, so he was actually running on the spot. Thankfully, it was at that moment that Tai Lung neared him because the tiles started shooting at the leopard's face, in a comical way. Naruto managed to climb up again. So he jumped, grabbed another tile, jumped off of that, and caught the scroll. He turned, however, and saw Tai Lung jump into the air and spun around. He quickly neared and drop-kicked Naruto in the head, making him crash into the ground. Because of his anger, Tai Lung shot towards Naruto's form and caused a shock wave when he hit the fox. Once the dust cloud left, Tai Lung stood over Naruto's pained body. "Finally," he said as he picked up the scroll. "The power of the dragon scroll is mine," he shouted as he opened the scroll. Suddenly his excited look turned to one of confusion as he could only see a gold page. "What? It's nothing." This made Tai Lung even angrier as he dropped the scroll and walked over to Naruto, who was trying to stand. Once there he grabbed the fox by the throat and growled, "Where is the real dragon scroll? That is it," said Naruto as he clutched Tai Lung's hand, trying to pry it off. Growling in anger, Tai Lung raised his hand and extended his claws. Just as he was about to kill Naruto, someone shouted no from behind and kicked him away, dropping Naruto to the ground. Turning, Tai Lung chuckled when he saw it was Tigress, asked Naruto weakly. However, she didn't hear him as she glared at the chuckling Tai Lung. "So nice to see you again, Tigress." "Shut up," she growled. "I won't let you hurt Naruto anymore," she shouted. Tai Lung then burst out laughing. "I thought so," he shouted before standing and gave Tigress a look. "You love him, don't you?" he asked, making Naruto's eyes widen. She didn't answer. "Silence is all the answer I need. Doesn't matter, I'll just kill the both of you and find out where you hid the real scroll," he said. Suddenly he ran and punched Tigress in the face, making her fly into a wall. "Tigress!" shouted Naruto as he tried to stand, but fell over due to his injuries. Tigress walked out, holding her side. Without saying anything, she ran straight for Tai Lung. She tried to use a palm strike, but Tai Lung just moved her arm out of the way and spun kicked her away. She got back up and ran at him again. This time he kept dodging every time she tried to strike. Her anger was rising as she glared at Tai Lung, with him holding an amused smirk. Finally he punched her in the stomach, making her gasp for breath. He then flipped and kicked her in the chin, shooting her high in the air. Naruto watched in fear as Tai Lung jumped up to her. He grabbed her neck and spun around. He let go and made her slam into the ground. He then landed on top of her. Chuckling, "Pathetic," said Tai Lung as he stood off her. He then kicked her hard. Hard enough for her to be thrown next to Naruto. "Tigress," he whispered in fear. She looked at him weakly. She had blood at the corner of her mouth and some on her fur. I'm sorry, Naruto," she said weakly, starting a coughing fit. "It's okay, Tigress, just rest now," he said as he held her hand. She nodded before closing her eyes and going still. Tears came out of his eyes as he stared at her form. Tai Lung began to walk over, laughing like a maniac. She truly was pathetic, thinking that she could defeat me. "I'm glad she's gone," he said. "Shut up," whispered Naruto. Tai Lung didn't hear him. "After I'm through with you, I'll just get rid of the rest of that furious five." "Shut up," shouted Naruto with a strange voice, as a strange red energy exploded out of him. Tai Lung staggered back in shock as this happened. He watched as the energy swirled around Naruto before flowing into Tigress. She glowed red for a moment and all of her wounds healed. The energy left her body and her body began to breathe again, but she did not wake up. Naruto stood, after gently putting her hand down. And Tai Lung's eyes widened. Naruto's eyes were no longer blue, but were now blood red with slits. As Tai Lung looked, all he could see was hatred for him. Naruto vanished before appearing in front of Tai Lung with his fist buried in his stomach. Tai Lung gasped as his breath was taken away from him. Naruto then moved and elbowed him in the back, slamming him to the ground. Naruto growled as he grabbed Tai Lung by his tail and flung him away. He then reappeared in front of the leopard and started to use a barrage of punches. As this was happening, Tai Lung couldn't do a single thing as he thought, "He's a monster." Naruto then grabbed him by the neck and lifted him up. "You hurt her," he growled out. "Now I break you." He raised his hand, extended his claws, and was about to strike until someone hugged him from behind. Naruto whispered, "Tigress, please stop," she begged. He froze when he heard her voice. "He's finished, he can't hurt anyone anymore." "But he hurt you," said back Naruto. "And I'm healed," she countered. "If you hurt him, then you are no better." This caused Naruto's eyes to widen. He dropped Tai Lung as he clutched his head in pain. "Get out of my head," shouted Naruto as his voice shifted. The red energy began to flow back inside of him slowly until there was nothing left. He fell to his knees, with Tigress still holding him from behind. He turned and she looked and saw his eyes were back to blue. He frowned when he looked at her. She had tears falling from her eyes and looked incredibly sad. "Tigress," he whispered. He put his hand on her cheek, making her unconsciously nuzzle into, and wiped her tears away. "Thank you." "For what?" she asked, blushing. She was again thankful that her fur hid her blush. "Saving me. If it wasn't for you, then I would have turned into a monster." She just smiled and hugged him, which he happily returned. Can I ask something? Yes, she said with a raised eyebrow. Is what he said true? He asked, indicating to Tai Lung, who was now unconscious. Is what true? She asked in confusion. That you love me, he clarified. Her eyes widened before she began to sputter. After an amusing few minutes, Naruto shut her up with a kiss that shocked her. A moment later, she returned it. They broke away after a second. I do love you, she said. He smiled. I love you too. Well, that is amusing, said Tai Lung as he stood, albeit shakily, and it was clear that his right arm was broken. You can't defeat me, he panted. You're just a stupid, nine-tailed fox. He tried to use a nerve attack on Naruto, but he caught his finger with ease. I'm not a stupid nine-tailed fox, said Naruto. I'm just Naruto Uzumaki, the nine-tailed fox and dragon warrior, he said whilst raising his pinky. Tai Lung saw this and cowered. The Wuxi finger hold, he gasped out. Oh, you know this hold? Asked Naruto. Tigress saw what was about to happen and hid behind Naruto. You're bluffing, said Tai Lung. You're bluffing. Shifu didn't teach you that. Actually, he did, said Naruto before flexing his pinky. Believe it, he said before a golden energy shock wave blasted through the valley. All the villagers returned to the valley, believing that the battle was over when they saw a golden energy. A dust cloud gathered all over the valley and they couldn't see anything. Finally, after a minute, two shadows appeared through the cloud. They waited as the figures slowly stepped forward and the dust cloud slowly lifted. They were shocked to see Tigress supporting Naruto over her shoulder. They stopped and the villagers all cheered, chanting Dragon Warrior. Way to go, Naruto, shouted Ayame and Chuki from the crowd. The crowd then separated and watched as 4 of the Furious 5 walked forward. Hey guys, said Naruto. Master, they said in return as they bowed. He turned and saw Tigress smiling at him. Master, she said with her head bowed. He smiled before tilting it up and kissing her. Of course this shocked everybody that was watching, apart from Ayame, who whispered, called it. They separated and Naruto whispered, Master, Naruto has a nice ring to it. He then widened his eyes and gasped out, Master Shifu. He let go of Tigress and ran to the temple. Once there, he ran inside and saw Shifu lying near the moon pool. Master Shifu, are you okay? He turned Shifu over and saw him open his eyes. Naruto, you're alive, or we're both dead, he said. No, Master, I didn't die. I defeated Tai Lung. You did? Asked Shifu with Naruto nodding. Wow. It is as Ogway foretold. He looked at Naruto. You are the Dragon Warrior. You have brought peace to this valley, and to me. Thank you, he said weakly before closing his eyes. No, shouted Naruto. Master, no, 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 please don't die. I'm not dying, you idiot, shouted back Shifu before correcting himself. Dragon Warrior, I am simply at peace. Finally, he said, lying down and closing his eyes with a smile. Naruto smiled and left the temple. At the entrance stood Tigress. How is he? She asked, worried. He just found his peace, said Naruto, although to me it just looks as if he is asleep. I see, she smiling. Naruto walked over to her, kissed her, and then hugged her. So what now, girlfriend of the Dragon Warrior? He asked, making her laugh lightly. I don't know. Maybe everyone needs to rest now, she said. Yawning, Naruto said, good idea. Let's go, and they both walked into the temple to rest, thankful that the battle was over and that they had found each other. Little did they know that an even greater legend would soon begin. The end. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.